Enterprise is presented by WGBH Boston in co-production with BBC London. With grants from public television stations. The Dun Bradstreet Corporation, providing business and information services worldwide. Merrill Lynch, Pierce, Fenner & Smith Incorporated, a breed apart. Charles E. Culpeper Foundation. And the Gates Foundation.
William Lear promised you that will... I can't do that. Because when you're developing a new aircraft, and this is brand new, this is high technology, it's something nobody has done before.
This woman's husband designed a revolutionary airplane a decade ago. Moya Lear was once a showgirl, and her fight to build the plane after her husband's death has all the flamboyance of show business. But it will take more than cheering crowds to get this venture off the ground. This week on Enterprise, Crosswind Takeoff.
I'm Eric Severide. A few years ago, this was just as much a paper airplane as this. The only difference was cost. It takes a great deal of money to design any new product, especially one that embodies the latest technology. If you are planning a quantum leap into the future, you had better cross your fingers when you jump. Almost everything is untested, and almost everything can go wrong. The realities of manufacturing and the vagaries of marketing rarely match the assumptions of a blueprint. And therein lies the bane of every risk-taking executive. This week on Enterprise, we'll look at two competing airplane companies as they make the painful transition from drawing board to marketplace.
Bill Lear's career as an inventor began over 50 years ago, and Moya Lear can still remember the moment.
He took an automobile radio and put it on the desk of Paul Galvin and said, "What do you think of this?" And Paul said, "Forget it. Don't come to me with your harebrained ideas, because Congress will legislate against this automobile radio because it will distract the driver." Now, that was like 1930, 1929, something like that. But he knew that that was good. The 8-track stereo. They came to him and said, "Hey, Bill, we want to save you some time and money. You can't get 8 tracks on a 1/4-inch tape." And he said, "Well, it's a damn good thing you didn't tell me that yesterday, because we just did it."
Lear made a fortune from the 8-track, but in 1962 he sold out and raised $14 million to design the world's first business jet. The Lear Jet was a revolutionary design and a great success. It made Lear another fortune. But again, he sold out, and in the mid-1970s tried to pull it off again. Oil prices had rocketed, so Lear set out to build a plane that had the performance of the Lear Jet, but used only a fraction of the fuel. By 1977, the sleek 8-seat design was complete, and in theory, years ahead of the competition. But in 1978, Bill Lear died of leukemia. His widow contemplated suicide.
I had the sleeping pills already, and that's not hysteria or morbid or anything. It's just something I knew I was going to do. And the next morning, I went to the plant, and I sat down at his desk and got involved in this airplane. He said, "Mom, be sure that this project goes forward."
Moya Lear set her sights on a flourishing market, now worth over $1 billion a year. These corporate planes, designed for executives too busy to wait for scheduled flights, come in two distinct types. The jets fly fast and high, but they're expensive to buy and to fuel. Propeller-driven aircraft cost much less and are more economical, but fly slower and lower. Anything that combined the economy of one with the performance of the other would surely be a winner. And that's what Bill Lear had in mind with the Lear fan. He opted for the economy of the propeller, but put it at the rear of the aircraft to push, not pull, and ensure a clean airflow over the streamlined jet shape. But the really bold step was to build the entire aircraft of this black cloth. Carbon fiber reinforced plastic is twice as strong as aluminum, but only half the weight. Military aircraft used it, 1,400 pounds worth in the F-18 and 30% of the Harrier. But no one had proved it was strong enough for an entire plane. It was a gamble that made Learfan's location in Reno, Nevada, particularly appropriate. But new technology is expensive, and the company soon needed another investor who was prepared to gamble. In 1980, it found one, 7,000 miles away. The need for jobs in Northern Ireland persuades the British government to commit $25 million to a production plant outside Belfast. Moya Lear is there to celebrate.
You know, when you start up a company in any country, any place, there are problems. There's always labor pain. And
If all goes according to plan, Learfan will create 1,200 jobs here.
And until we meet again, may the Lord hold you in the palm of his hand. Thank you.
In Belfast, American advisors work with the Irish to gear up for production, ambitiously planned for 1982. The British government has made it a condition of its investment that the prototype fly by the end of 1980. But it's not until December 31st of that year that the Learfan rolls out of the hangar in Reno for its maiden flight. There are only hours to go before the deadline expires.
And it's like waiting for a baby to be born. You can't make that baby be born. You gotta wait.
What about waiting for the flight now, the actual flight?
The actual flight is, you know, I want to see it fly.
But then the first of two disasters. The pilot is too impatient on the final high-speed taxiing run, and the brakes catch fire.
But then when they changed the tires and we had 15 more minutes to fly, and we said, okay, go on, take advantage of the 15 minutes, no light left, close the door, thumbs up, take off, goodbye, and Hank and Dennis are in, and they checked their control panel and accidentally flicked the switch that activated the fire extinguisher that filled the cabin with foam.
1980 ends with the Learfan still firmly on the ground. The next day should be too late, but the British government relents and officially declares it to be December 32nd, 1980. Within months, the Learfan confirms its designer's prediction of a 400-mile-an-hour top speed and fuel consumption of less than half its jet competition. By 1981, the company has over 200 orders. But the next major hurdle is certification, a grueling set of tests by the Federal Aviation Administration. There are many who doubt a plastic airplane can get through it.
Those are the same people who said we'd never get the airplane in the air. We have many challenges in certification. I don't see any that are insoluble at all. We've worked very closely with the FAA and the CAA. We know what their criterion are, and we believe that we can solve them. I must say that they've been very difficult in the criterion that they've set for us, but they are achievable objectives.
Inevitably, the competition tries to catch up. This is the Starship One, a $250 million design from Beechcraft, one of the world's largest manufacturers of business aircraft. It should do well. The company president knows all about its rival. He's none other than the former chief executive of Learfan, Lyndon Blue.
Either you stay ahead or you get trampled by the people who are coming up from behind.
Blue resigned from Learfan during a financial crisis.
The Learfan program from beginning to end was a succession of very great financial problems and challenges. Unfortunately, they didn't have the kind of financial stability that a company like Beechcraft has.
By late 1982, the Learfan is still a long way from certification, but Moya Lear is as committed as ever to the project. Another $30 million investment by the British government and $60 million from an Arab consortium have reduced her stake to a token 1%. But she still watches over the all-important wing test.
Hi, Al.
Hello, Mrs. Lear.
It's a very exciting, interesting test. They put the wing in what they call a whiffle tree, and then they apply forces to warp it, bend it, break it, you know, just incredible forces they put on that wing. Al sits in the control room and he says, 10%, 20%, and then when he gets up to 90%, everybody's just hanging there waiting.
But in December 1982, the wing cracks badly. Rather than design a completely new one, Learfan compromises and strengthens the existing design, adding weight and reducing the space for fuel. The changes cost 6 months of Learfan's lead, but by the summer of 1983, the plane is out of the hangar again. This splash test checks whether any water will enter the engines on a wet runway.
Hi, Walter. We finally got the pictures for the water trough.
The test pilot
And the
is
data.
Don Madonna.
Those nice.
He wants to reassure Walter Boner, the company's only remaining marketing executive, that all is
See the
well.
engine test parameters and the results from the data system showed there were no jiggles at all as we went through.
Boner is having a hard time dealing with customers fed up with the endless delays.
We need to worry about, but for the initial certification, I think we're home free.
Great, wonderful.
I'm very pleased with the results. It was a fun test, too. We
Yeah.
learned a lot of things.
It didn't get wet.
Well, not exactly, but
Tests seem to be going so well that Boner and some other Learfan managers have even convinced themselves it's time for a cautious celebration.
Congratulations, I think nothing fell apart today.
Well, that's 4 out of 6. The fourth test went excellent.
We just got 2 more to go and we've got it made.
Well, that's as far as the wing is concerned. We still have the fuselage to go. I had a little heartburn there right at the end of the test today when the boss looked like he was going to have a heart attack before we got to 100%.
Yeah, at 85%.
But our health insurance rates keep going up.
We lose more people by stress when we do airplanes.
But I don't know of any other business that I'd want to get in.
A little late, isn't it?
It is, after this many years.
25 years.
Aircraft nomads.
it's very much like a football game. You know, we've got the team ready, we're in good shape, we got a game plan, we know what we need to do, and we should be able to execute them. If we execute the game plan, we'll make it. And I'm 100% confident that we will make it and can do it, or I would leave.
But time is slipping by. On August 29, 1983, Beechcraft's Starship takes off for the first time, 2.5 years after Learfan's initial flight. With up to 12 seats and a price tag of $2.5 million, it's a little bigger and more expensive than the Learfan, but just as fast and revolutionary. Its extra forward wings swing back for fast flight, forward for takeoff and landing, and help to reduce stall speed. It, too, is built largely of reinforced plastic, and the pusher propellers are familiar as well.
They're quite comparable, as a matter of fact. You know, flatter is the most important form of imitation, I guess. I think I said that backwards.
In December 1983, the Lear fan fails another test. This time, it's the fuselage's turn to crack under stress. The aircraft is grounded, and certification is delayed until the summer. Almost out of money, the company must do all it can to cut costs. In Northern Ireland, they can only wait for certification. The huge ovens that bake the carbon fiber wings are barely used, while design problems are worked out in Reno. Only 450 of the promised 1,200 jobs have materialized. David Fell is the British government's watchdog at Learfan. By early 1984, he's becoming increasingly concerned about the massive government investment, now nearly $80 million.
And so far, it's going quite well. I think we have stabilized the engineering design.
Fell is anxious about excessive costs at the Irish plant and testing delays in Reno. He wants answers from the plant manager, Larry Larkin.
Is this the normal sort of team you would have working on the wing?
Yeah, it is. This is just about right.
Right. You may already have the answer to one point that I was going to ask you from these reports, but E3 was due to go to flight operations on the 15th. That's tomorrow, in fact.
That's correct.
How's that looking, in fact?
Well, as of last night, Alan called me about 8 o'clock, and they are going to slip that schedule by about 8 days. They're saying now that it'll go into flight as of the 24th.
The big question then is, supposing there is another slippage in the certification program, is there any more room for cost cutting here?
Yes, we could take a look at some other avenues to try to trim up costs.
Where do those lie, in fact?
Well, I wouldn't like to speculate too much, but...
One way to cut costs is to cut jobs. On January 9th, Larkin announces 91 layoffs. The rest of the workforce is put on a 3-day week.
We must survive until certification.
At a special news conference in Belfast, Moya Lear needs all her public relations skills to counter the tough questions.
I can't forecast. I'm not, I can't look at a crystal ball and say, this is going to happen, and I, Moya Lear, promise you that will... I can't do that. Because when you're developing a new aircraft, and this is brand new, this is high technology, it's something nobody has done before. And I have to say to all of you, we're pioneering without the pioneer.
In Reno, blind faith has become the natural defense for the beleaguered marketer, Walter Boner.
The plant in Northern Ireland is solid. At the moment, we had to cut back a little bit on some employments, mainly white-collar workers, but in the future, I can see nothing but an increase in employment in Northern Ireland and an increase in activity, because as soon as the aircraft is certificated, the full manufacturing capability of the factory is needed, and I see nothing but good things coming up for the future.
In the hangar, a modified prototype is looked after by another true believer, a security guard.
That 003, what's up here, they're revamping that too now. They're taking a lot of parts, they're rebuilding and they're making it real fine, and it's a beautiful airplane.
But then on January 27th, an ominous announcement.
Attention all experimental personnel, attention all experimental personnel. There will be a short meeting in Hangar 2 next to Fuselage 9 at 12:30. A meeting at 12:30.
43 of the 400 workers are fired, including the security guard, and the hapless executive with nothing to market.
I heard, as a matter of fact, today, that the marketing function would not be necessary anymore, and to not waste time, I'm leaving today.
Oh, I felt terrible. We lost some people that I'm very fond of and very close to. And I suffer when we lose people because I'm a woman. I'm no good as a businesswoman because I'm not tough enough, I'm not hard enough, and I get involved with these people. I know their children, and I've helped them, and I felt very badly about today.
The Starship is now only 18 months behind Lear Fan. Beechcraft won't try to sell it until after certification, but they're already preparing the ground.
Can I have 3 people to do the aircraft, please?
This woman's job is to seduce these professional pilots with a taste of the future. It's their employers who are potential future customers of the Starship.
We're going to start back here with the baggage compartment area. And I want to tell you that golf clubs do fit here. I get asked that question a lot. Okay, then we go on to the bar area. You have a hot and cold storage. Down here we have your oven.
The plane, some charm, and plenty of beer have the desired effect.
Can you imagine how it would feel if your boss just all of a sudden tell you that one of them is on order?
It's fantastic design. They're going to be way ahead of everybody.
They're going to have some problems with the thing to begin with, but I'll tell you what, it's so far ahead of what anybody else has done today. It's just going to revolutionize the whole industry.
Did you see the test pilots in the film strip?
Oh,
yeah,
and he was going like this, just waving in the window, man, and he was going like that.
Yeah. Wouldn't I be doing the same thing?
I would too, yeah. If I was up there, boy.
We've got 40 pilots, and we'll all be fighting over the first one, I guess.
Yeah, really.
By the end of March, the heavily modified Lear Fan is ready to fly again.
You ready?
It's an important flight, and David Fell makes sure he's there to see it.
David, thank you, sir. I'm sorry we were so late getting out here.
Okay, good to see you. Hope it all
It's a
goes
good
well
airplane.
this morning.
It's going to go well.
Good.
All right.
How long are you going to fly down?
Oh, about an hour, probably,
Great.
this time.
Okay.
Okay?
Good.
You're going to be gone when we get back, right?
I will be gone
Have a
when we
nice
get
trip.
back. Okay, good to see you.
Don't drink too much of that dark ale. Bye-bye.
I'll see you when I get back.
Oh, yes, you bet. Bye-bye.
The strengthened wing and fuselage have significantly changed the plane's specifications, but Moya Lear still has to believe it's her husband's design.
He'd have been so proud. He'd have been flying. He'd have been flying. He'd be very, very proud of this aircraft because this is the best one. It's nice and solid. It's built beautifully.
The aircraft that is now flown is not Bill Lear's airplane. It looks like it. It is not what he had intended. It would be very sad.
Now that he's been fired, Walter Boner has lost any loyalty to Lear Fan.
The specifications of the aircraft were originally, for instance, weight-wise, to be something over 3,000 pounds empty weight. They are now slightly higher than 4,900 pounds. So it reduced greatly the amount of passengers and load that can be carried on a long-range flight. The range itself, which was 2,000 nautical miles, has now been cut to 1,500. The aircraft has come to be less of a performer than was expected and will also be less of a performer than what the competition is planning, if the competition comes out with what they are saying that they will come out.
In April, there's another major fuselage failure. Back in Northern Ireland, David Fell knows that the resulting delays and extra costs could mean the end of the Lear Fan gamble. The company may have to abandon its production plant, by now on a 2-day week. The total loss of 360 politically sensitive jobs would be embarrassing for the British government, in particular, the minister responsible for Lear Fan, Adam Butler.
What do you know? What can you say about the immediate future and the two-day week?
I think that this is going to be quite a difficult issue because clearly the Northern Ireland workforce are involved in the production element of the aircraft, and it makes no sense to go on making production parts for an aircraft which may change as the design develops. I mean,
what would they do then? What are the options? Mothballing?
I think
total closure. I mean, what?
Yeah, it could be necessary. I think to mothball it for a period of months.
That would have a devastating effect on morale.
Absolutely devastating. I mean, I think those are decisions which are going to have to be taken by the board of the company as soon as the meeting that I've talked about.
Difficult judgment.
Very difficult judgment.
But do get them to exercise the maximus of PR, make a public statement about future jobs, and that will help. And they owe it to because they've got a very loyal workforce there. They've done very well, but equally that workforce, if there's got to be further cutbacks, must accept the realities of the situation.
Yes.
All right.
Yes.
Good. Well, there's nothing else, I think, for the moment, then.
We will slowly but surely achieve certification. And when we do that, I will feel that we've finished it. Because manufacturing is another whole science and a whole nother business. Once we've achieved certification, I will feel that I fulfilled my promise to Bill.
Bill Lear's dream is still balanced on a knife edge. Learfan now hopes to solve its structural problems and to be certified early next year. But meanwhile in Northern Ireland there is nothing to produce. In early June, Learfan shut down its Belfast operations and laid off all but 30 employees. Even if the plant reopens, the company will have several more years of losses before it can hope to bring the plane to market. Who will put up the money to keep it going? And how will customers react to a plane that costs more and delivers less than once promised in a persistently soft market? As for the Starship, it isn't flying quite so high either. Beechcraft has started construction of a second prototype, but the certification date has slipped to 1986, and there are rumors that Lyndon Blue's position may not be as secure as it once was. Meanwhile, several other companies have launched similar development programs of their own, hoping to avoid the mistakes of both pioneers. So to add to Learfan and Beechcraft's problems, the skies may soon be crowded with other planes learning to fly.
This program was a co-production of WGBH Boston and BBC London, which are solely responsible for its content. Enterprise is made possible by grants from public television stations. The Dun Bradstreet Corporation, providing business and information services worldwide. Merrill Lynch, Pierce, Fenner & Smith Incorporated, a breed apart. Charles E. Culpeper Foundation. And the Gates Foundation.